Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever it is, wherever you are, welcome to Good Values Podcast. In this episode, I speak to somebody who I've never actually spoken to in person before or on a video call. I've only ever had a text chat with. And it's someone who had invited me onto a Discord server about 2.5 years ago. And I really appreciated it because at the time I was having a really difficult experience at university, and having people reach out and being able to join a community was really valuable to me. And it was a really nice and interesting art group. So I appreciated being able to see their work and share my thoughts and feelings on my work. And there was little artist challenges and things like that. It was really fun. So I'm glad that when I reached out, she was able to be a guest on the podcast and willing to come on. It was really fun, and we talked for a long time. But sadly, what happened was the recording got cut off at some point because there was a bit of technical difficulties. So the last part of the conversation was actually missing from this. But I'll explain that more at the end. For the time being, this episode is Mistbind. Let's take a look.
Hello. I am Mistbind, also known as Melanie. I make primarily illustration drawings in a digital format at the moment. I previously was a fine arts painter, and then before that I was a sculpture major.
Wow.
But I eventually switched to digital because it's easier.
Nice.
It's more the freedom of it that allows than easier, but because time still has to be sunk into it. But the effort to be able to find time to do a thing is a lot easier.
Great for testing out colours as well, for your colour combinations and compositions, I suppose. Digital is going to be very nice to experiment with, as opposed to, having the paints or whatever you were using beforehand, where if a colour doesn't quite gel with another mix, it must have been more time consuming than what it can be just to mask off an area and inject other colours.
Or even delete an entire layer and then start a new layer.
Yeah, so that's cool. So I'm wondering, how long has it been that you've been doing purely digital artwork then?
About 2.5 years, and the reason I know that specifically is because every year I redraw the same digital drawing I did, which was my first digital drawing.
Really?
And I redo it every year, and so this year was the 4th rendition, so I guess that means 3 years then. 3 years.
What is the image that you're redrawing?
It is an image of a robot that I refer to as an HB. It's a little semi-triangular head, triangular body robot sitting on a log with an older woman holding an umbrella.
Wow, is that a reference to something that I might know, or what's that from?
No, unfortunately not.
It's just an image you came up with.
Yeah, I drew it in as a drawing that I intended to make a painting of once. And then, years later, when going through my notes and old sketches, I found that I had it, and I was like, I never made this into a painting, so I might as well do it as the first digital drawing.
Brilliant.
And after that, it became the repetitious digital drawing that rehappens every year.
Oh, brilliant! So it's
So then I at least know how my progress is going.
That's good. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. I was thinking more it's just like a ritual where you honour this specific image, and you've kind of conjured that from your imagination as well, because it sounds really nice,
I guess the kind of, in theory, the idea is that when I am at the age of the older woman in the picture, I will have a robot sitting next to me.
Oh, cute.
And we will be enjoying a quite a little moment in a rain in real life one day, because if I keep doing it for like 50 years, then I could quite literally have a little robot next to me.
Have you got the brolly? You've got the brolly ready so that you can go and take out an umbrella with
I mean, I always have an umbrella, but I might need to get a special one for that.
Yeah, something specific design. That's really nice. I mean, do you mind describing your artwork for the audience? I mean, I'll show it visually, but I'd like to have you describe your work in your own words.
So it's become more illustrative and more direct influence because I've been trying to reach a wider audience. And with that, I've been incorporating more direct and blatant symbology into it. And so the illustrative, whimsical nature of it becomes symbology, and which is why currently, like, my two big projects are the tarot card deck that I'm making and the Alice in Wonderland robots that I'm making. And because both of them have very strong symbols and can reach an audience even if they don't understand the symbols. And reach, it sounds vain, but at the same time, if someone can't see your artwork and get something from it, then it's hard for them to even be able to respond to it.
That's true.
Everyone can look at the Piss Christ and be like, oh, that's a cool image, but only like maybe a fifth of the viewers who see it are actually able to see the layers beyond it.
Yeah.
And while I do incorporate like deeper levels, the first two levels, maybe even three levels, if 60% of my audience can see what the first three levels are, I feel I did it successfully.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, you've got amazing artwork. I love your work because it's well composed. It's beautiful kind of design of the characters, and it's really nice and clean as well, which I really appreciate. Clean work. And it'll be really interesting because it'll be a contrast to the guests that I've had on so far, who are all fine art guests. So to have more illustrative work will be really nice for very striking imagery.
And I came from a fine arts background. I have a bachelor in fine arts.
Yeah.
And I respect it and I love it. The fine arts crew is like family, but sometimes I experience other artists who I can see the depth of their artwork and I can see the wonderful thoughts that they put into it. But I know if I take that and show it to my coworkers, let's say, I'd be lucky if they can get past the first level.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've just finished a university course and had quite a hard time there. I've been discussing with people how it seems to have flipped, in my estimation, from beauty first, concept second to now concept first, beauty second, in my idea of how I've been observing fine art. So I used to look at a painting and think, God, it's so beautiful, and then you start to see the layers of concept within that. And these days I see a concept hit me really strong, and then you've got to find the beauty in that concept, is the way that I've been interpreting the change in the movement, I suppose. Do you agree, or is it different for you?
I agree with that, and the kind of historical precedence of that is the fact that the Dada movement happened, the anti-art movements happened, and they were all about meaning first, and then if you find something pretty in it. And actually with the Dada movement, they didn't even want you to find the pretty in it. They didn't want you to see beauty. They only wanted you to see a message.
Yeah.
And I understand why that movement happened, and it's a very good and strong movement, but the fact that Hello Kitty is recognized internationally, but Frida Kahlo, who, I had to explain to 3 of my coworkers yesterday who Frida Kahlo was, because there's an art show in my city that is showing paintings of her this month, and I was so excited about it, and they didn't know who the hell she was.
Oh no.
And I was like, I was like, she was in Coco. How do you not know who she was?
Yeah, shocking. Well, that is something where I really hope that fine art can have a reconnection with the public. And not that I think the old days were, predominantly about the public, but I feel as though the average person would be inspired and uplifted by, artistic depictions and renditions of specific events, and they'd feel a significance to just the narrative of life and I don't know, I suppose our engagement with different things that may seem mundane being depicted beautifully can inject a bit of... Sorry, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, I always felt the Impressionists made a good balance of that, where they had meaning, and they had meaning, they had depth, they had a bunch of hidden layers.
Yeah.
But then itself, the image, the painting they made was really pretty.
Yeah.
And so you could get any audience member, you could get any viewer to first look at it and be like, that's a pretty image. And then when they are there for more than 30 seconds to look at the image, they will absorb depth. They'll see other meanings in it.
Yeah.
And that's often a thing that I've observed is like, you have to be able to connect someone's eye for more than just 10 seconds.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't, then they're just going to see that image, oh, that's a cool image, and then go to the next one.
It reminds me of Instagram. Even myself, I think my habit with
Right.
Instagram is I'm not really appreciating each piece. Even if I'll double tap and like it, I'll go, oh, that's nice. And I won't invest as much time as I should do. And I think it's how the platform's designed, but it could just be a strange, poor habit of mine.
It is literally how the platform is designed. And like a lot of that is the issue of like trying to get engagement and reaching people online while also like catching their eye for more than a few seconds.
Yeah.
When the platform you're on basically benefits them to only engage for a few seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a real loss based on the actual the ratio of images you want them to look through in different avenues you want them to go down. So yeah, I have a question I'd like to ask. It's a bit more, how do I describe it? I'll just ask the question and see how you feel about it. What do you value about art?
I mean, that's always a giant broad question.
It is, yeah.
So, the thing I value most about art is the act of creation itself. And I respect anyone who tries to create anything. And so that's what I value most, is at least the attempt to make something.
Yeah.
I've watched some bad movies and I've seen some relatively bad art, but I can still respect that they made a thing. They still went through the effort to make a thing. Like I had a friend who told me for years he was going to make a movie and never got around to making the movie. So if I see a bad movie, I at least can respect that they got the camera out and made the movie.
That's a really good way to see it. Yeah. Yeah, if you don't actually take those steps and start to make something, it's never going to be anything.
When I was in college and felt like very angsty at times because, late teens, early 20s, not knowing what to do with your life, there was a comic book that I would read anytime I had issues with why I made art. And it's an obscure comic book, of course it is, called I Feel Sick. It's only 2 issues, and it's made by Jonan Vasquez, who's best known for making a cartoon called Invader Zim.
Oh, right, okay.
But decades before he ever made Invader Zim, he made some very disturbing comic books. And one not as disturbing was called I Feel Sick, and it was about a girl who was an artist, and she was making a weird painting of a doll, but she kept procrastinating on it. And because he wasn't working on it, the artwork started creating itself to the point where it was revealed that it was basically like a demonic entity was coming from this painting. And the reason why the demon was like wanting to associate with her was because the ability to create was an ability that only humans and God had.
Right.
Because angels and demons couldn't create. And so the only way to make new entities and new creations was to mess with an artist. And only a demon could enter in if the artist procrastinated too much.
Oh, nice.
And so, on a weird way, I felt it made the connection to me where, like, if I'm creating, I'm doing what only I and a God could do.
Yeah.
But also, if I don't create, I'm giving away my potential to some other entity beyond myself.
Yeah, some demonic spirit that could come up whilst you procrastinate.
Like I said, it's a weird comparison, but it did help when I was in college.
Yeah, I mean, when you're going through those things, it's nice to have something that really speaks to you, and it can be well removed from your literal experience, but it's something which really inspires you and speaks to you. So that's really interesting. I'm going to look into that. Definitely going to have a look and see if I can bring up some references for the episode.
Yeah, it was just a 2-part comic book made by the guy who made Invader Zim.
Yeah.
And when that cartoon came out, it blew my brain.
Yeah, it sounds great. It sounds really cool.
Because the comic book creator who made Invader Zim, the thing he was known most for before that was a comic book series called Johnny the Homicidal Maniac.
Really?
And so when Nickelodeon's like, we have a show made by this guy. Like, the dude who made the Homicidal Maniac cartoon?
Wow. I'm just very thankful that they let these creative people through, regardless
Right?
of what they must happen upstairs in these meetings.
Yeah.
How they get it through. Crazy.
Some of the interviews, like post interviews, were kind of hysterical because they like evidently Nickelodeon had this thing where they'd show like episodes of like certain cartoons people were working on, and so like they had before the team that made Invader Zim came on was an episode of Dora the Explorer.
Really?
And then their Dark Harvest episode, where it's an episode about children's organs being taken.
So when I went to Manchester, because I'm in North Wales, when I went to England, to the north, to Manchester, and stayed with some friends, they had Nickelodeon, and they'd show me some cartoons, and I was surprised with how dark a lot of them were.
Yeah.
Like, what's the one with the cowardly dog? That one really made...
Oh, Courage!
Courage the Cowardly Dog. I love that, because I just thought, this is so scary, some of this stuff. I mean, there was one where I think it was it I don't know if it was a mosquito or an alien or something, was sucking the brains out of the elderly couple, and the dog was just trying to warn them and getting told off.
I think that was a mosquito.
Was it a mosquito? It was just...
I think so. I didn't watch every episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog, but
yeah,
I think they would have done a mosquito for that one.
Yeah, it was. I just remember being shocked, and then that's when I became more familiarized with Ren and Stimpy, and loved Ren and Stimpy, because that's again so dark and so clever ways of exploring really kind of creepy scenarios, and yet just about keeping it so that you could have it as a cartoon. I mean, it's just really creative madness, I think.
There's I'm blanking on his name. I know his last name's Ward, but the guy who made Adventure Time,
Pendleton Ward,
is like Pendleton.
Yeah.
Like, I adore him.
Yeah.
Because he kind of did it a little bit reverse, where like all of his imagery in his episodes were super cute.
Yeah.
But there was a weird undertone that was like, there's some dark things going on.
Yeah, doesn't it rain daggers in episode 1 that I've seen of Adventure
Yeah,
Time.
yeah.
And I was thinking,
yeah.
how do you do that for a children's cartoon? Having daggers rain from the sky.
Well, and then like there was like an entire like plot with the Ice King, which was like the most sad and depressing story I've heard in like a long time, and the entire world is like the end result of multiple nuclear wars and like.
Oh, I felt very bad for the Ice King. I did love Adventure Time. I felt really bad for him because especially when you find out his history, his backstory of who he was. It was just, I love the voice acting. It's just so perfect.
Oh yeah, it did great.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a big cartoon buff, so like yourself, I just eat that stuff up.
And then I highly respected Pendleton Ward when he worked with a podcaster called Duncan Trussell to make Midnight Gospel.
Yeah, I've got Midnight Gospel. I've not watched it yet, but I've got it.
Oh, you should.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fabulous. It definitely helps you learn how to meditate.
Yeah, really.
It gives literally like at least 3 direct meditation.
Well, Duncan Trussell's he's big on that, isn't he? He loves the Bhagavad Gita. He always references that when I've heard about him. He
references it all the time.
That's all he talks about, which I love because it's a super old, it's the origin of the story of a lot of the, biblical stories and things which have just plagiarized from the Bhagavad Gita. So I appreciate him discussing it.
And Duncan Trussell's meditation teacher, he has a book. His name's Mike, but I'm terrible with names. But like he has a book called Art, Spirituality, and Making a Buck.
Yeah.
And I highly recommend it.
Nice.
Like especially for any artistic person, like it's basically teaches you how to keep your spirit while also trying to make some money.
Oh wow, that sounds cool.
And because he came from a music background, he was a music producer and then became a Bodhisattva, like master of Buddhist meditation, and met Neem Karoli Baba and all the like big names of Indian Buddhism and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I'm still a record producer, so this is how you don't lose your soul while trying to make artwork.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's what a crazy culture crossover, I suppose, but it's nice to have that honoured in different realms so that you can maintain a kind of footing in what you've been brought up in, and yet to keep your interest in more spiritual and kind of enlightened ideas, because that can be compromised, can't it, when you try to maintain a music production or animation.
Right.
Yeah. But there's one which I have to recommend to you as well called Over the Garden Fence, I think it's called, or Over the Garden Wall. You might not have heard of it. I think it's American, but it does have a British voice actor. It has John Cleese feature in it. But really, really funny, and it's got a start and an end. I think it's only one season. I'm not sure, but it's very contained, very interesting, kind of dark fairy tale story. And
I think I've heard of it before, but I can't remember if I've watched it.
If you can't find it, let me know and I'll send it to you because I have it.
I'll definitely look it up.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I mean, especially since I'm always a John Cleese fan.
Yeah, he's fantastic and he's very recognizable. I looked it up immediately just to make sure that I was hearing correctly, but yeah, it's brilliant. You're so easy to talk to. I've not even gone to my questions yet. So there is a good few questions that I've written down that I ask every guest. So I'm going to try to pitch a couple just to see. I mean, some people don't like the question. If you don't like any of them, just let me know. You don't want to, waffle out an answer if it's not true. So just tell me if it's a weird question. But this one's fairly standard. It's just basically, how is it? How long have you been making artwork? Like, how did you get started making artwork?
Let's see. I mean, I assume everyone just starts when they're little and like elementary school level, and they make a few drawings and a few people like them, and then they continue to make them. So I assume that's where most people start. When I tried to become more serious about it, and like got into acrylic painting and sculpture, was about high school. And then I focused primarily on sculpture and art education during college. Then switched to acrylic painting when I didn't have the tools to do sculpture as well. Like it's kind of hard to, when you move to a different state and you don't have the connections to have a aluminum foundry to
Wow.
to pour liquid metal. Like, you're in an apartment in a small town in Texas, that's kind of how I ended up switching to acrylic.
Wow.
And painting. And then after a few bad experiences with art galleries, that's when I switched to digital, because at least I could get eyeballs on my artwork.
What was the experience then with galleries?
So from Texas, I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is a nice little city and has a good little art community. But I spent a year making a series and then put my name out, put out applications to show my work at galleries. And I found 2 that would show me. And so they were smaller galleries, but you gotta start somewhere in a small town, in a smaller area, or in a new community. Really, you have to start somewhere. And so I had a show scheduled for this one gallery, and my wife had a argument with one of the heads of a department that was connected to the gallery but wasn't the gallery itself. And so they then scheduled an event on the same day as my gallery showing, despite the fact that most of the people who would have gone to my event went to the secondary event, because they pushed the secondary event. And despite the fact that I still sold more paintings than anyone else had during that year at the small gallery, they removed me from their email list and then kind of gave me a bad note, gave bad word to the other gallery that had accepted me. So the other gallery had removed me from their list, and it was all because my wife had a disagreement with someone, not me. And so it became like a weird politics, social clique thing. And I'd experienced that once before. It wasn't as bad, but I experienced something similar once before, and I was just like, after 2 experiences, I didn't want to risk a third one of people bickering that I'm not talking to or don't associate with, affecting people even seeing my artwork. Yeah. And so after that, I was just like, no, and the fact that I spent an entire year to make 20 paintings, and only to have, even though 5 of them sold, and it was a technically decent sales, the eyeballs on the artwork were fewer than I would have liked.
Yeah, it affected the audience really because of the event. Obviously, the people who were managing the exhibition, if that's affected their ability to promote the event correctly, that's really upsetting, because it just shows a lack of professionalism and a spitefulness that you hope doesn't exist in that sort of arena, really.
And but it does. And after that, I did switch to digital. For me, I don't think I made a digital drawing worth a damn for a year and a half, but I still made them and posted them so people could see them. And then now as you've stated, my artwork's a bit more smooth and direct, and so there's more kind of a purpose. You can tell what I'm drawing. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
And so because of that, I've had like even with Instagram's algorithm screwing me over quite a few times, I still get quite a few, like 1,000 or so eyes between the three different social medias seeing my artwork, and I've received a few commissions and things like that. Usually small, but I at least can do artwork and get people who want the artwork.
That's excellent. Yeah, good for you. It's pushing through all of the obstacles and challenges that come your way. It's just having to keep focused, isn't it? Beyond all of the drama and politics that is just completely unnecessary a lot of the time.
Right.
It's unfortunate. So what would you say is the inspiration for your style of artwork? Is there, is it game, is it anime, or is it, Western animation, or is it something completely different?
I originally would have to say illustration. Styles like Pendleton Ward. There's also, when I was in sculpture, I made similar characters, but I made them in sculpture, and that was in response, or it kind of inspired by a New York artist named Tom Otterness, and who made like very illustrative, cartoonish sculptures that would then be in downtown New York.
Wow.
And the idea that like his artwork was whimsical and approachable, and there's an interview I saw with him in person was he noticed that a few of his pieces, like they were all cast in bronze, but they'd be very shiny on the top of their heads because he knew people would keep touching them, and so he appreciated the fact that even though the oil on people's hands would eventually erode and destroy the artwork, he appreciated that was a sign of the direct connection that people had with the artwork.
That's lovely.
And then thematically, I like to usually connect spirituality, Buddhism, Taoism, along with the robotic theme, because I like to create the imagery of something that people don't have the association of a spirituality with, and then putting the spirituality in them.
Brilliant.
A book that I have a lot of books, obviously, as you have a lot of books, but there's one called The Buddha and the Machine, which is like a 1960s book.
Wow.
And one of the early parts of it, the author states, for those of you who question the connection of Buddhism and the machine, you either misunderstand Buddhism or you misunderstand the machines.
So, I mean, are you a Buddhist then? Is that your?
I classify myself as a Taoist, which is the drunken cousin of Buddhists.
Yeah, I like Taoism. I think that's really contemplative. Is that what you pronounce that? Contemplative? It's really very thoughtful, and I can see the observer, come into Taoism because of the observation of nature and right. This, cycles and patterns and the flow of, different systems that happen in nature. So I really appreciated Taoism when I was introduced to it. So, yes, you're more of a Taoist than a Buddhist.
Mainly because there's a lot of things in Buddhism I really like, but there's some history in Buddhism that I'm a little iffy on, where while Buddhism did a great job for most of its history, there's some times where they were either awkwardly sexist, even the Buddha himself, Siddhartha made some statements where are you sure? And then I've heard stories, but of course you could find bad stories for anything almost. But in Japan, during they pushed Zen Buddhism, which Zen Buddhism primarily is Taoism in Buddhist clothing, but there was a weird corruption to it where they were selling certificates of enlightenment.
Really?
It was they did some weird things.
I've heard that
And
that's what was used for the kamikaze pilots for Pearl Harbor
yeah,
was Zen Buddhism, and it's definitely got some dark sides to um, how they raise children. I've read certain things that I don't know how true they are, but it's quite disturbing to think of the rituals and the different tests and challenges they put infants through in order to
right.
ensure that they're strong enough to survive the world. It's very disturbing, but that's specific types of Buddhism. So I understand there's several
Right.
branches. Yeah,
And so, like, as a whole, I can like Buddhism, but I'll still hang with the Taoists.
yeah, yeah. There's less brutality and sexism that's so
Yeah, because
troubling.
even like you can find some sexism, but normally in Taoism, they like you could switch the gender of a sage and no one would even question it.
That's nice.
And I've read quite a few like Taoist stories and such, and then they're like it uses the sage, she did this, and like the fact that like they said she doesn't adjust the story at all.
Yeah.
And they even there's a story was like the seven sages, I believe it is, where like there was a woman who was being awakened to enlightenment, but she was a bit too yin, and so she needed to be a little less. No, she was too yang. She needed to be less aggressive.
Oh, really?
She went a little too far the masculine side.
That completely changes my picture of what you were talking about. I was thinking this
she was
poor woman was too young.
Yeah, no, she was too masculine, and they were like, you're like, pull it back a little bit. But like of the seven sages, I believe she was the second one to achieve enlightenment. But
Wow.
it was just the fact that like the trial she had to accomplish was pulling back her aggressiveness and yang nature a bit.
Good for her. Yeah.
While another sage in the same story was like a male, and he basically went the opposite way and was like a bit too yin, and had spent some time with the prostitutes and like cross-dressed, and they were like, "You're doing great, but tone it down a little bit, and you'll get there."
It's all about a balance, isn't it? I suppose you need a bit of both.
That is the yin yang, is the balance.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, that's really interesting. But yeah, sorry to pull it back to drawing and things, but
I'll ramble on any topic you give. So
no, I love it.
Pull
it's
back
great.
as often as you want.
I wanted to ask, do you have a specific palette that you like to use for your artwork? Is there specific colours that you like to incorporate into most of your pieces, or that you specifically identify with?
I've been teased by when I was in college. I got teased because I use bright contrasting colors way more often than they're necessary. Despite the fact that I personally enjoy cool colors more, the majority of my artwork seems to have warm tones in it. And so, like the monk bot, I have a bad version of him behind me, is like completely, bright yellow eyes and orange robes with,
I love it.
and like the cool tones are in the grays and the metallic of it. And so, personally I prefer cool tones, my artwork always seems to somehow become more warm.
That's a great balance there.
And
it's really nice.
The high contrast of dark colors and blacks and things like that with the very bright yellows, oranges, reds is making so that whatever I'm doing pops. It seems to happen more often than I would like to admit.
Can I see that little? Is it a soft toy, like a teddy?
It's one I made a while back, but I actually plan on getting a professionally made one. That will.
That's lovely, though. Did you make that yourself?
I'm not the best sewer.
That's brilliant. Oh. No, that's great. That's really nice.
I just realized it was on the Zoom camera, but not on the other camera. But The
Well,
I plan on paying someone who's much better at making things than I am to make a puppet of him in the next year, and so then I'll have
brilliant! What type
like
of
a
puppet?
3-foot like puppet of the monk bot.
Oh, to put your hand,
Yeah,
not
no,
like a marionette
hand
then.
twist with the stick underneath the arm to make the arm move. I had an idea
Oh,
that like
brilliant!
as another way of making artwork, I could make small videos, and then
That would be
because
brilliant.
TikTok's a
Absolutely,
thing,
yeah. Yeah,
and so with that, I'd be able to like make 15-second videos of a monk bot as a series.
yeah. Oh, you could go viral. Could be something which really sends you into a stratosphere. You never know.
I mean,
I
my
love
wife's
it.
excited about it, and she's often not excited about my artwork.
Oh, really? No, I love it. I think that's fantastic. It looks great. I love the fact that you can see bits of the yellow eyes in the darkness behind you as well, because it seems like, I don't know if it's two paintings or one where it's a split in the middle of black and white. Is that two different paintings?
Different painting, and then
So the one with
yeah,
that, I see. Yeah, I didn't know if it was just black and white,
No,
half and half, but I love the yellow eyes
orange
are
one,
popping
which
through.
cannot be seen as well on the video, but it can be seen here.
Yeah,
Is an angry monk bot, while this one is an older, like one of the last paintings I did during college, which is hard to like. You'd have to see the very top of it. It's a very long painting, but it was how many robots does it take to change a light bulb? So at the
Oh, brilliant.
very top,
That's
there's
cool.
like a few robots trying to change out a burnt light bulb.
Amazing. That's great. Because all I can see is the yellow eyes. I'll have to get an insert image off you of a lot of your work so that we can put up clean images whilst
Right.
we're talking about it. But yeah, that's a really nice concept. I like that. I suppose it'd be nice to find out, what is it? Oh, we're at 18 minutes. Right, okay, I'll ask the next question on the next session. If we just stop the recording, I won't stop the meeting. Okay.
Okay, so that's the episode done. Now, the questions at the end were missing off because, as I said at the beginning, there's some missing footage. So I have asked Mistbind to provide me with some of the answers that she gave at the time. We had a great conversation. It's a shame that some of the end part was missing, but there we are. That's just what happened. So the question, what's the most beautiful thing you've seen today, was the pursuit of knowledge by people who she'd experienced, and her example was a language called Esperanto, which I wasn't familiar with, and she went into the history of Esperanto. So look into it yourself. It sounds fascinating. She did a great job of explaining it at the time. I can't do it justice now because I don't have the recording where we had that conversation, but I remember talking to her about it, and I am going to look into it myself. So maybe in a future video I will discuss Esperanto with you. But that was her most beautiful thing she'd seen that day, was people pursuing knowledge and growing and sharing in that way, using that as an example, the language that she'd experienced people learning. And then the question which I like to ask guests as well is, what do you like and what don't you like about your own artwork? And what she doesn't like is that she wants her work to be more refined, which I thought was quite an interesting, specific critique of her own work, which I really like, because that's what I'm like with my own work, you know. So she wants more refinement in her work. But what she does like in her work is the sense of whimsy to her characters and to the scenes that she creates, because she feels as though she can come across as a bit more serious and not quite have that fun side when when she lives day to day. She doesn't feel like she expresses that kind of playfulness and that it comes out in her artwork. So that's a lovely answer. It's a shame that we don't have it in her own words, because it was just really nice how we wrapped up the talk, and by the end of the chat we were both really loosened up, and we'd had a long conversation about different aspects of our interests that wandered way off what my questions usually cover. But there we are. I think next time I'm going to get her on, we'll ensure that all of the technology that we're using is working fine, so that we don't have any issues. But that's just one of those things. It was, unavoidable, unfortunately. I really appreciate her coming on. Check out her Instagram at Mistbind. I'll put a link in the description. She's a really nice person, so show her some support. And if you did like the video, then please leave a like, comment, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next episode.